The first bomb hits without warning. A violent odor from the sky that slams into the flight deck and turns steel into liquid fire. The deck jumps underfoot. Men are thrown against bulkheads. Aircraft fuel ignites instantly, rolling across the planks in black and orange waves. The air fills with burning gasoline, hot metal, and cordite. You can taste it. Bitter, oily, wrong. The carrier shudders again. Another impact, closer this time. Somewhere forward, anti-aircraft guns hammer upward in blind defiance, their barrels glowing red, their crews shouting into the wind. The sky is full of engines, not friendly ones. A Zero screams overhead, then another, then too many to count. Smoke pours up through the island structure, thick and choking, crawling into passageways and berthing compartments. The deck crew runs straight into it anyway. No hesitation, no orders needed. They drag hoses through fire that sticks to skin and cloth, fire that refuses to die. The steel beneath them groans, a deep, wounded sound, like the ship itself is in pain. Someone yells that steering is gone. Another voice reports flooding below the waterline. A third voice never finishes its sentence. The sea is close now, too close. Through the smoke, the American flag is still there, whipped hard by the wind, unburned, unyielding. No one says it out loud, but everyone feels it. This ship is dying. She was never meant to be a legend. When USS Hornet, CV8, slid down the ways and into the water in October 1941, the world was not yet at war with her country. Not officially. The paint was fresh, the steel was clean. Her flight deck smelled of new timber and oil, not smoke and blood. Most of her crew had never heard a shot fired in anger. They were young, farm boys from Iowa, dock workers from Brooklyn, mechanics who knew engines better than fear. They learned the ship by touch and sound, the vibration of turbines through the soles of their boots, the constant metallic breathing of the hull as it warmed and cooled day and night. Then came December 7th. Pearl Harbor burned, and the Pacific changed forever. Hornet sailed into a war already going badly. Battleships lay sunk in the mud of Hawaii. The enemy moved fast, confident, unstoppable. Island after island fell like dominoes into the sea. The word victory felt distant, abstract. On board, training intensified. Flight operations ran from dawn to dusk. Engines screamed overhead until sleep became a memory. The deck crews learned to read hand signals through rain and exhaust smoke. Pilots learned to trust a strip of wood floating on an endless ocean. Every man understood one thing clearly. This ship was not built to survive alone. An aircraft carrier is a promise, not a weapon. She cannot fight without her planes. She cannot run without escorts. She lives only as long as the men on her deck believe in each other. At night, the Pacific stretched black and empty in every direction. No lights, no horizon, just the slap of water against the hull and the distant hum of machinery. Some men wrote letters they never mailed. Others stared into the dark and imagined home. A few sensed it already, that this ship would not grow old. Hornet steamed west anyway, because the war was waiting, and so was her fate. The morning they arrived, no one spoke. 16 aircraft sat on the flight deck, wingtip to wingtip, noses pointed at nothing but empty ocean. They were not naval planes. No folding wings, no arresting hooks. Army bombers, B-25 Mitchell, machines that had no business being on an aircraft carrier. The deck smelled different that day. Hot oil, fresh paint, anxiety. The pilots kept their distance, quiet men with tight faces and eyes that measured everything. At their center was James Doolittle, calm, precise, already somewhere else in his mind. The plan was simple and insane. Launch from the sea. Bomb Japan. Do not come back. Below deck, sailors whispered about it in mess lines and passageways. They understood enough to grasp the truth. These bombers could not land here again. The men flying them would disappear into the vastness of Asia or the Pacific. Hornet carried them anyway. For days the carrier pushed west under radio silence. Gray skies, cold spray. The ocean rolled endlessly beneath the hull, each wave slamming into the bow with dull, rhythmic force. Escorts formed a tight ring around her, destroyers cutting white scars into the water, all of them knowing they carried something fragile, something priceless. Then the picket boats appeared, enemy trawlers, too early, too close. The decision came fast. Launch now, or lose everything. The ship turned into the wind. Engines roared to full power. The flight deck vibrated like a living thing. Deck crews took their positions, faces streaked with grease and sweat, hands shaking not from fear, but from the cold and the moment. The first bomber rolled forward. There was barely enough deck. The engines screamed. The prop wash tore at clothing and skin. Sailors ducked low as the aircraft surged past them, wheels bouncing. Then, empty air. The bomber dropped, vanished below the bow, and for one unbearable second it seemed to fall straight into the sea. Then it climbed. Men cheered, some laughed, some wiped their eyes quickly and turned away. One by one, all 16 took off. Each launch shorter than the last, each departure final. When the deck was empty again, it felt wrong, too quiet, like something vital had been torn away. Hornet never fired a shot that day, but hours later, explosions echoed over Tokyo. The damage was small, the message was not. Japan was no longer untouchable, and Hornet had just painted a target on her own hull. The ocean swallowed the sound of celebration as the carrier turned back east. No music, no speeches, just steel-cutting water and the distant knowledge that the enemy would remember this. So would history. After the raid, the sea felt smaller. Hornet steamed through it with the awareness of something wounded but still moving, every vibration of the hull carrying a silent question. Had they been seen? Had the enemy already marked their course? There were no answers, only orders. The carrier returned to Pearl Harbor briefly, long enough to refuel, to replace aircraft, to read headlines that spoke of daring and revenge. On board, there was no celebration. The men who had launched those bombers were gone, vanished into China, into prison camps, into graves without markers. Victory tasted thin. Then came Midway. Hornet was part of the force sent to stop the next Japanese thrust eastward. The enemy carrier fleet was somewhere beyond the horizon, invisible, but heavy in every mind. The air buzzed constantly with flight operations. Planes launched, planes returned. Planes did not return. On the day of battle, her air group searched the ocean and found mostly nothing. Confusion reigned, orders overlapped, bearings were missed, fuel ran low. Torpedo squadrons flew on into empty sky, pressing forward until the ocean below them turned into a mirror of death. Some of Hornet's pilots never saw the enemy. Some never saw home again. The battle would be decided by other carriers, by timing measured in minutes and fate measured in smoke columns. When it was over, Japan had lost 4 fleet carriers. The tide of the Pacific had shifted. Hornet survived. But survival came at a cost that did not show on any map. The crew felt it in the empty bunks, in the way helmets sat unused on hooks, in the way names stopped being spoken out loud. After Midway, there was no illusion left. This war would not be quick, and this ship was now known. Through the summer of 1942, Hornet ranged the Pacific, covering landings, ferrying aircraft, launching strikes into hostile skies. Japanese reconnaissance planes circled at a distance, just close enough to remind everyone that the enemy was watching, waiting. The carrier became a hunted thing. Men slept in short stretches, boots beside their bunks. Damage control parties drilled until their hands bled and their throats burned from shouting commands through smoke-filled compartments that were only rehearsals. For now. Every man knew his station. Every man knew how fast steel could turn against him. At night, the ocean glowed faintly with bioluminescence, broken by the wake of the ship. It looked almost peaceful, almost kind. No one trusted it. Somewhere ahead, the Japanese carriers were regrouping. Planes were being armed. Pilots were studying silhouettes and deck layouts. The sky itself was preparing. Hornet sailed south toward the Solomon Islands, her decks crowded with aircraft, her crew exhausted but steady. The mission was clear. Hold the line, protect the Marines on Guadalcanal, and, if necessary, pay the price. The storm was coming. Everyone on board could feel it. Hard and fast. The sea was restless, dark blue under a sky already streaked with high cloud. Wind crossed the deck in sharp gusts, snapping signal flags and carrying the smell of aviation fuel across the bow. Flight operations began before the sun had fully risen. Engines coughed, then roared to life. One by one, aircraft vanished into the sky. Tiny shapes swallowed by distance. Then the warning came. Enemy planes, multiple groups, closing fast. The calm shattered instantly. General quarters sounded across the ship, its metallic wail cutting through every passageway and compartment. Men ran, hatches slammed. Steel doors clanged shut as the carrier turned into the wind, engines pushed to their limit. The deck vibrated under full power, a deep, relentless tremor that traveled up through boots and bones. High above, the first attackers appeared. Dots at first, then wings, then the unmistakable shapes of dive bombers rolling onto their backs. Anti-aircraft guns opened fire. The sky filled with black bursts and white streaks. The noise was overwhelming. Continuous, a thunder that never paused for breath. Gun crews worked on instinct now, ears ringing, shoulders bruised by recoil, eyes locked upward as they tracked shapes diving straight at them. The first bomb struck near the island. The explosion ripped through the flight deck, tearing open steel plates like paper. Burning debris flew in every direction. Aircraft parked nearby were hurled aside, wings snapping, fuel lines rupturing. Fire erupted instantly, fed by aviation gasoline that spread across the deck in fast-moving sheets. Another hit, then another. The carrier heeled sharply as shock waves rolled through the hull. Lights flickered and died below decks. Somewhere aft, a torpedo slammed into the starboard side, its detonation a deep crushing blow felt more than heard. The ship shuddered violently, water pouring into compartments meant to keep her alive. Smoke engulfed everything. It crawled along the deck, thick and oily, burning eyes and lungs. Men disappeared into it and re-emerged as shadows, dragging hoses, carrying wounded, shouting orders that dissolved into the roar of fire and engines. The deck was slick now. Water, oil, blood, fuel, all mixing into something treacherous underfoot. A plane crashed onto the deck in flames, skidding across the planks before smashing into parked aircraft. The impact sent a wave of heat outward, a blast so intense it forced men backward despite themselves. Paint blistered, steel warped. The air shimmered. Damage control teams fought like men possessed. They cut away burning wreckage with axes and torches. They flooded compartments already half full of seawater, knowing every ton added dragged the ship lower. They carried the injured past them without stopping, eyes fixed on the work, hands moving automatically, because stopping meant seeing too much. Steering failed. Power faltered. Hornet slowed, then staggered, her forward motion bleeding away as flames climbed higher and smoke poured skyward like a signal visible for miles. Enemy planes circled, waiting for their chance, while friendly fighters fought desperately above, twisting and diving in chaotic, lethal patterns. Below decks, water rose steadily, cold, black, relentless. The ship that had once raced across the Pacific now lay crippled, burning, surrounded by the wreckage of her own strength. And still the crew fought, because as long as she floated, she was not finished. Not yet. The order came quietly, not shouted, not dramatized, passed from mouth to mouth, from passageway to passageway, with the weight of finality behind it. Abandon ship. For hours, the crew had fought to save her. They had beaten back fires that refused to die. They had counter-flooded compartments until the deck tilted at a sickening angle. They had restored power, then lost it again. Every trick they knew, every ounce of strength they had left. Now the list was too severe, the fires too deep, the sea too close. Men moved with discipline, born of exhaustion. They gathered what they could not leave behind. Wounded shipmates, signal books, the ship's colors. Some paused, just for a second, to place a hand against a bulkhead, feeling the heat of the steel through their gloves, as if saying goodbye to something alive. The water below was waiting. Life rafts were lowered. Nets went over the side. One by one, sailors climbed down from the burning giant into the cold Pacific, boots slipping, hands shaking from fatigue more than fear. The sea wrapped around them instantly, heavy and unforgiving. From the water they looked back. Hornet still burned. Flames crawled along the flight deck, licking at twisted aircraft and shattered equipment. Smoke poured upward in a thick column, dark against the fading light. The American flag remained aloft, torn at the edges, still flying. No one spoke as they watched it. Destroyers closed in, plucking men from the sea. Some were silent. Some whispered prayers. Some stared without blinking, eyes locked on the carrier they had called home. Attempts were made to sink her. Torpedoes struck. Charges detonated. But the ship refused to die easily. She drifted, wounded, stubborn, as if clinging to the surface by sheer will alone. Night fell, and the burning continued, lighting the clouds from below like a funeral pyre. Eventually, the order was given to withdraw. The escorts pulled away, leaving Hornet alone in the dark, still afloat, still burning, surrounded by empty water. The ocean swallowed the sound of her fires one wave at a time. She sank the next day. October 27th, 1942. After midnight, enemy destroyers returned and finished what the sea had begun. Torpedoes struck deep. The hull gave way. Water rushed in with unstoppable force. At last, the fires dimmed, then vanished, as the carrier slipped beneath the surface, bow first, into the black Pacific. She had served barely a year, 12 months from commissioning to destruction, and yet her shadow stretched far longer than her life. She carried the first American bombs to Japan. She stood the line when the war was still uncertain. She drew enemy strength toward herself and paid for it with steel and blood. The men who sailed aboard her carried her memory into every battle that followed, into every long night at sea. The ocean closed over the wreckage, smoothing the scars, hiding the twisted decks and shattered planes beneath thousands of feet of water. Silence returned, complete, eternal. But silence does not mean forgetting. Somewhere in the dark, the hull still rests, cold, intact. A warship that never surrendered, a ship that burned so others could advance. When the screen goes black, there is no victory music, no cheers, only the understanding that courage is often brief and sacrifice is almost always quiet.